trying to implement them into some type of an IEP. Now, I was successful in being able to get some paradoxical approaches into IEPs only because I was doing them in small levels, in small situations, and I was finding success at the time. So the principal and administrators and teachers were trained on how to implement them, and it was successful. So I'm going to expose you to two types of paradoxical approaches. Okay, I talked about keeping the big picture in mind here. Okay, paradoxical interventions. There are two that are most commonly used. The first one is called prescribing the problem. Has anybody ever heard of this? I know Judith has. Okay, this is where you take a behavior and you require that it happens every day for a short period of time. Okay, so if that behavior is lying, okay, then you say to if you're trying to extinguish the behavior of lying, and that's your target behavior, then you would say, okay, every day from 12 until 1 during lunch hour, everything you say has to be a lie. Everything. And we'll assume, I'll let the lunch ladies know, that everything you say is a lie. Because we want you to be able to have lying if it's important to you. So go ahead and lie for 1 full hour. And so that gets frustrating for them, right? Because they go through the lunch line, I want mashed potatoes. Oh, that's a lie. And they give you broccoli or something. So you exaggerate the behavior to the absurd level. Okay? This is where I said it could be a little tricky. So you don't want to do this willy-nilly. You really want to have it be very focused. So, for instance, screaming. I don't see screaming, I see tantrums. Okay, tantrums. I actually do this with my own kids. So you require every afternoon from 4 to 4:30, or when they get home from school, that half hour, every day they have to tantrum for that full half hour. The full half hour. Not for 5 minutes, for a full half hour. Throw a tantrum. Come on, please. I know you can do better. I've seen you. Come on, you have it in you. And suddenly you're giving them permission to be able to have the tantrum, which they're doing as a desire to be resistant. You're giving them the permission under controlled circumstances, and you kind of take the fun out of it. It's no longer an act of resistance at that point because you've given in. You're like, okay, go ahead and do it. Let's see here, stealing. Is stealing on here? It's not. Stealing on here. Okay, sleeping in class. You could, if you have a kid who sleeps in the class, you could say, okay, the last 5 minutes of every class is your sleep time. And so as you're going through, you look at the thing, it's now Johnny's sleep time, everybody. Johnny, go to sleep. Go ahead. Go ahead and sleep. And he's not going to fall asleep at that point, obviously. But the point is that and it's absurd. I guarantee it's absurd, and it sounds very dangerous at times. So you have to be very careful and cautious about how you approach this. But you want to set very strict parameters. So if a kid is screaming or insulting other people, then you want to say, hold that, okay? Your time for screaming and insulting people is at 12:15 today. Okay, so make sure that you hold that at that point. And then whatever they say at 12:15 to 12:30, whatever the case may be, any insulting that they want to do at that time period, there's no consequences for, because you're prescribing the problem. This is the Jay Haley's approach to family therapy, and it really does work. But like I said, you need to use it with caution. You need to figure out what the one behavior is that you're trying to extinguish. So for instance, when couples argue, a family therapist would say, okay, every night after the kids go to bed, you guys have to argue for 20 minutes. Think of something to argue about and argue. Argue incessantly for 20 whole minutes. Well, guess what? They're not going to argue much because they'll be like, do you have anything to talk about? No, I don't either. And so soon, the arguing then becomes diminished. Does this make sense? It's kind of crazy, but guess what? It works. Okay, so your problem student, take all of 2 minutes if you can, talk with a partner. Please don't give names away, okay? And see if the prescribing the problem would work for your child in one situation and how you would implement that. Go ahead. If you could, yes.
Like some of them don't like you said sound.
Okay, shh. I'm sorry.
Sounds like crazy. Like letting a kid come in an office and scream obscenities for 30 minutes. And if it's a kid who's already screaming obscenities in the classroom, how are you controlling that they won't do it in the classroom if they get 30 minutes to do it? And if you have an administrator that won't allow you to have a kid scream obscenities for 30 minutes, what are your options?
This is where it gets tricky, because trying to get administrators on board with some of these things can be difficult. Is the first question I have, is the screaming of the obscenities based in a need to be able to call the shots? Is it an act of resistance, or is there something else behind it?
We were just talking about that. We don't have like a kid in mind. We're just talking about like that specific example.
These behaviors or these interventions work with kids when the core value that's at play is the need to be able to call the shots themselves, self-control, self-determination. If that's not what the main value is that's at play, then these will not work. Okay? So if in some cases with Tourette's, they may be screaming obscenities or whatever. Giving them 20 minutes a day to scream obscenities it's like giving candy to somebody. You know, it'd be fine. Yes.
I just had a question. How is this different for externalizing behaviors versus internalizing behaviors? Because, like, we deal with a child who's undergone a tragedy and often becomes tearful and withdrawn. He has a history of that, but I don't really feel comfortable. Okay, be sad about something for 20 minutes right now.
Well,
I don't think that's a good
no, because no, it's not. Because again, I'm saying these interventions work when the core value that's at play is the need to be able to call their own shots. They want to be the boss. So this is meeting resistance without resistance. Okay, I don't think that she's crying because she is expressing some form of resistance. I think it's probably.
Can you give me an example of an internalizing behavior that this would work on?
An internalizing behavior such as like shutting down?
Yeah.
Sleeping in class.
Sleeping in class would be one. Hold that thought, okay? Because I want to get us through to the next section here, okay? And we're quickly running out of time. Going with the resistance is the second one. So the first one is prescribing the problem. The second one's going with the resistance, okay? This is where you give them what they want under controlled circumstances, okay? So if they won't do their homework at home, then give them a time throughout the day to be able to do their homework. That kind of goes without saying. It's kind of easy, right? But bedtime, who had the bedtime exam back there? You came up with the alternative of giving them the option of being able to stay up late and prove that they're okay from it, right? That's beautiful. Another option that I've seen people say is, okay, well, you want to stay out late, like for curfew, stay out late, that's fine, okay? If 10 o'clock is too late for you, or too early for you to come in, you could stay out to 11, go on back out, okay? But tomorrow you need to be in it an hour early. You're borrowing from the bank, so to speak. So if the need is self-control and be able to call the shots, a kid who's extending curfew is doing that as an act of resistance. If it's not active resistance, if they just simply lost track of time or something else happened, then you don't want to go to this extreme. You want to try other interventions which are more in line with classical behavioral training. But when you're dealing with resistance, this works. So the curfew is, if you tell the kid you could stay out an hour late, in fact, you could stay out an hour late this whole week, but next week you owe me an hour every day. Do you think the kid's actually going to do it? No, they probably won't. First off, they've already said goodbye to their friends, and then they'd be sitting out on the porch kind of bored. Nothing to do. It's not worth it. So going with the resistance is a way of giving them what they want under controlled circumstances and then coming back and discussing it afterwards. If you don't have that discussion afterwards, then you're just playing games with them. It's important to do some type of process afterwards. Okay, and I'm afraid we probably don't have time to do that. So then negotiate a solution. Please always be open to compromise when you can be. State your terms, listen to the student's terms, and seek a compromise. And then, I said this at the beginning of today, any plan that you have is only as good as how you follow through on it, okay? So if you don't follow through on it, then nothing's going to be successful. Says, pinky swear doesn't cut it anymore. My lawyer has some documents for you to sign. Okay? I'm dealing with a kid right now, lots of oppositional behavior. We put a plan in place for him to have computer time if he earns signatures, and the teacher won't let him go in time. So he constantly misses his behavior time. So it's the teacher's issue, not the kid's issue. So he's starting to disengage from it. So then lastly, don't be afraid to ask another colleague or somebody who's been here, or you can even email me for professional help. Paradoxical approaches work with oppositional behaviors because they target that kid's need for self-control and empower them to make decisions that are linked with real-life consequences. And then please stay grounded when you're doing these types of things. It's easy to get caught up in the fun of it, but do some additional research on the effectiveness of them. Thank you. I want to thank our interpreters as well for their hard work today, and for our hosts.